Hello, it's Kim Murden here with one of the Good Herb Wife podcasts. Today I'm going to do some reflections and chat about a very pertinent issue, I would say, which is anxiety. And I observed that in my 20 years of practice and having left and lived abroad and come back, I've noticed the escalation of this emotional state amongst a lot of people. And I would posit probably one of the greatest factors in that. I mean, of course, there'll be a myriad of reasons. We're complex beings, but that society has drawn us more away from being close to the land. Whether it's how we're working on the land or whether we're able to have access to walking in natural spaces. And hey, I'm doing social media right now and you're watching me through this digital medium. But I think because we've privileged so much of the head over the what physically happens in the body, I suggest that that has a big part to play. So, what are the very simple things that we can do herbally? Well, I would suggest there's lots of access to some herbal teas that you can get from your, health food shops and your supermarkets. Whilst there'll be culinary tea bag cuts, it's not to say that they won't have some efficacy in what they can do for you. Obviously, when people are coming to see me and they've got issues going on with feeling agitated and anxious and possibly, on that spectrum of feeling depressed, or not sleeping well, these are all part and parcel of a similar story. I will mix up a brew, from the herb teas or the tinctures for them that are very specific to their needs. But what is it that you can get off the shelf? Well, for starters, chamomile, a very relaxant herb. It's anti-spasmodic, so all the smooth muscle in our bodies the tension will go out of that. It's a digestive, so again, if there's tension in the system and agitation in the system, we will not be processing our food well. That can increase agitation. And also, we have to look at what foodstuffs we're having. Excessive consumption of things like sugar. Sugar is a stimulant. It has an inflammatory process on our bodies, which is a challenge to our bodies, which brings on an agitated state. We can look at the obvious things like the caffeines, which all these things have their place. I'm not going to be judgmental and say you must never have these things, but it's about balance. So if we think about, whatever we put into our body has to digest and break down into the various components of food, the components of giving us energy. So if the body's having to work extra hard, like first of all, deal with the inflammatory effects of sugar, uh, that is going to make the system agitated, basically. So let's be a bit calmer and kinder. It likes to have food that is complex, the sort of complex carbohydrates and the proteins and the fats, going to give us a slow release of energies. So that's sort of, I've digressed a bit from chamomile tea, but to say that food's really important in that, as is the time and the place and the manner in which we eat. Are we eating on the go, on a rush, or are we sitting down? Are we paying attention to actually the food that's on our plate? Or do we just, we're very bad in Britain, I think, overall. We kind of see food as just fuel rather than necessarily something to celebrate where it's come from and as a social thing. So these are important little components that we can work with ourselves to put back into place, as can the very simple thing of actually making sure you chew your food well, because again, that's helping the whole digestive process. So although I'm saying what this talk is about agitation, if we don't slow down and eat our food slowly, then this has a direct correlation to our state of being. And underlying, a lot of when we say we're agitated or anxious, uh, let's be mindful of why. And it's rather than just sort of going, well, why am I? A good question to ask is, what's the bedrock? What's dry? What are the habitual thoughts, are there habitual thoughts going on with that agitation? And I can give you a secret here, really, it's a trade secret, that often if we can sit with what the real discomfort is and name that, whatever space that we name that in, of what our real anxiety is about, then things will really change, and to enable us to move to a place where we're in a place of equanimity, really, with our state of being. Life is complex. We are complex beings, and we can also hold very opposing thoughts at any one time. And the wording that we use within our own internal conversations in our head and with each other will really shape how we approach life. So I'm just thinking, I have always quite a lot of good conversations when I'm out dog walking on the hills. And earlier on in this year, in our crazy 2020 year, I was talking to one person, and I think she's saying, I'm really frightened, I'm really scared. And I just paused, really, took a breath, and she took a breath. And I said, are you really? Are you really in this moment in time? And if we enable ourselves actually to stop and look around, and she was actually in a perfectly safe environment out in the landscape, there were no threats. So it's about being honest rather than spinning. And by going back to my herb teas, I would say that's what, if we sit down and we make ourselves a drink out of something such as chamomile, you'll get other mixes on the shelf that have got valerian in it, anything that's got like volatile oils in it, like lavender's great, lime blossom, uh, melissa, lemon verbena. So some of these things you can grow yourself in the summertime. They are working on all sorts of levels, and they are, it's not placebo. It's a real direct action, as I say, on the digestive tract, on the nervous system, on the muscle tissues, which, we're this whole myriad of being. So give yourself a bit of space and to maybe reflect whilst having a cup of tea. Why, actually, and tea, black tea. I've done a video about that. Is calming in itself. Really be honest, and to take some agency over just naming things, and also be aware of who and what stories you are buying into. There is always an on and off button, even for me, whether it's the news or, certain friends who chitter chat away in a certain way. So be mindful of who you're listening to, how repetitive is the message you're getting, and whether there's a different message. And perhaps it's good to just put in a couple of things, because I said I was going to, in these podcasts, talk about, reference some of my husband's work. I'm just going to look at one of his cards he's got here, which it's actually a Rumi poem, but it's called The Guest House, which is a very familiar, I think, Rumi poem to lots of people. So this being human is a guest house, every morning a new arrival, a joy, a depression, a meanness. Some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all, even if they are a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture. Still, treat each guest honourably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice. Meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whoever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from the beyond. So maybe what that poem can give you, I know some people aren't great fans of poetry, not great fans of Rumi, so maybe to put it into more simplified, everyday terms of someone of the land, I often say to people, look, our feelings and our emotions are rather like the clouds in the sky. They come in all shapes and forms, and some linger and some are blown along very fast, some evaporate, but they're always changing, they're always moving. Nothing is here in a fixed state forever. And if we use that as a compass, use the natural world as a compass, I would suggest we find our ways much more as sentient, vibrant, living creatures, um, rather than maybe privileging these great minds that sit on top of our bodies and thinking that's the only state of being. Anyway, that's just a little drop in the ocean of my thoughts on anxiety. It's something we'll return to in many shapes and forms. So thanks for listening, and see you again.